History has a way of getting away from us, whether it be omitted by victors or abstracted by time. But it's there. You can feel it. There's a violence to silence. The truth, the hard truth, the uncomfortable truth, is often buried deep in the soils of a soul. This is a story about digging up this truth and breaking the silence that hurts us all. This is a story about a conversation that can heal us.
All right, sound speeding. Camera's good.
Rolling.
Yeah, we're rolling. Cool, good. All right, how you doing, Dr. Sluters? Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the work you do here at LSU.
Been here 20 years doing research on these kinds of topics. And then, it was during COVID, spending some time on the internet, reading a bunch of stories, and read one about different universities in the South, Clemson and University of Richmond, that had found plantation cemeteries on their campuses recently. So kind of a light bulb went off that, well, I knew this used to be a plantation, but never really thought about it too much before. Never thought about doing research here, but I started digging into the documents, and I've been using those archives for years doing my research on other topics, and also in Bing, found references to a cemetery.
My name is Stephen Carl Finley. I am the inaugural chair of the Department of African and African American Studies at Louisiana State University. My first thought about slavery and LSU, I already had a context. I mean, even the house where I live, where we are right now, this was a sugar plantation. So when I heard the hints a few years ago about slavery and LSU, it wasn't surprising. I mean, many universities across the country, as you already know, have a history in relationship to slavery. Either they were funded by the slave trade, or all their buildings are named after slave traders and pro-slavery activists, and so on. So I mean, it's nothing new.
That convinced me what I need to do is reconstruct this whole kind of hidden history of LSU. The British make the first plantations here in the 1760s, 1770s. Then the Spaniards take over, then the Americans. And so it's got 150 years before LSU was here. This was a whole series of plantations growing indigo, tobacco, cotton, and then sugar for most of the 1800s. This was just one of many. But because it is on a university, I think it gives us kind of a unique opportunity to leverage that in terms of education, because there's plenty of courses here on campus about the Civil War, about slavery, about plantations, about plantation architecture, about all kinds of things. Being able to use our own case of having been a plantation in that teaching, I think, can make the kind of things that seem really abstract to people a lot more concrete.
This seemed to be deemed as a political issue by acknowledging this space. So there was a lot of emails that was sent, all types of university administration, department heads. Anybody you could think of was contacted about the ceremony. And one thing I want people to just start to look around at the audience on the ceremony and see who you see. And then I want you to also think about who do you not see that you feel like should have been there. The School of Social Work put on this libation ceremony, and not all of the School of Social Work was present.
I should note that there was one initiative that went through the Faculty Senate at LSU about slavery. So what that was about, because one would have thought that the Department of African and African American Studies would have been looped in those conversations, but we weren't. And so I heard about it through another faculty person who actually was disappointed that African and African American Studies didn't play some central role in what the Faculty Senate, whatever the resolution was trying to do in response to slavery.
I never would have thought that a university would almost forget, ignore such a historic and also a sacred site. Also, things will be built on top of it. I almost didn't believe it, honestly, when I heard about it. So I was initially invited to join the diversity committee as a student representative. And during the time, this conversation of what can we do to honor this space, what's kind of going on. Of course, I didn't have any idea what they were talking about. And so I had to Google, and there was very little information, even online at the time, around like what was this space, what was it even prior to LSU, and then also what was this cemetery and where was it located. Like I had to do a lot of digging. And so when they decided to do a libation ceremony, I thought that that was the best way to honor them, especially because you're talking about people of African descent, and what's the best way to try to reconnect them than to do a ceremony that's really based off of African tradition.
Regarding some of the repairs that LSU can do, I'm going to be somewhat pessimistic on this because I think that many of the structures are built upon slavery. Again, universities are just one example of that. How do you repair that, short of dismantling these structures that reproduce sort of the benefits of whiteness and the role that they play in a culture that keeps a permanent underclass, which is always black and brown. Again, this is part of the afterlife of slavery. How does one repair that? But if I was going to be generous, sure, scholarships to students could be one way of dealing with that. How about just paying black faculty what they're worth, given how rare they are across the country and the inordinate amount of labor that we do? How about we just start there? But also increasing the numbers of black faculty, which is also important for black student retention. If you're gonna give students scholarship, you're gonna recruit students. The research says they're more successful when you have more African American faculty.
I think the answers really need to come out of a discussion that involves scholarship. And I think, what I'm most interested in is the geographer's place and how do people think and feel about places like LSU's campus. I think this research can really enrich our understanding of what this place is and was, because the way you think about this place in the present has a lot to do with its past, obviously. We're always talking about our past at LSU, the old war school, etc. But what about talking about, more of the past, all of the past?